color in glass comes from adding various materials to the mixture of raw ingredients called batch. Most of the colorants are compounds
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? I figured it was loud enough. Well, we're just getting started today. Our artist right now, his name is Peter Hermansson. He'll be in here for a residency from July 1st through 5th. So we're just getting started today. Peter is this one. This is Peter. He's our resident artist from today until the 5th. Today is day 1, so we're just getting started. Right now, we're making a piece of his that is in this pickup kiln right now. These over here are some of his work. He's a Swedish artist, so he made these in Sweden and brought them with him. We're not making these today, but they're out so you can see some of his work. The pieces we're making today are in this pickup kiln over here. He's going to pick them up out of there at about 1,000 degrees and then encase them with clear glass and blow them out into a shape. So we're working on this shape right now. Let me hold this up so you can see it. So this is the shape of the piece we're going to make. They're working on the foot of this right now. So over there, they're making this bottom part. We're getting all our colors ready. So I can start from the beginning if you guys have never been in a hot shop before. There's hot shops, which is where you work with the glass when it's hot, and there's cold shops where you work with the glass when it's cold. To make the pieces that we're making involves multiple days of using both the hot shop and the cold shop. Peter Hermansson is a Swedish glass master, highly regarded for his temporary use of traditional Graal and Ariel techniques. So that's what the techniques are called that get you this effect where it looks like these images on the glass. You make what's called a blank, which is just glass with a layer of color on the outside that you can sandblast and carve away the outside layer to show what's underneath. So making those requires multiple days of sandblasting and then heating the glass up, putting a layer of color over it, cooling the glass down, and then sandblasting it again over and over again to make multiple layers. But let me tell you a little bit more about our artist here. Following his formal studies at the Orrefors National Glass School in Sweden, Hermansson has spent 2 decades developing a graphically expressive graffiti style. Notably, his unique graphic illustrations are transferred into the surface of his glass vessels through an etching technique, creating a powerful visual narrative. He has a website, peterhermansson.com, and an Instagram if you're interested in seeing some of his finished work. We also have some images of his work, if we can get the screen on. We're working on that. Peter's artist talk is Sunday, July 5th from 1 to 2 here in the hot shop. If you can't make it to the hot shop, you can also watch the live stream, which will show his talk, and he'll tell you more about his work himself. But we're getting started with making our first piece. So all of the glass in our furnaces is clear. So to add color to it, you have bars of color. So this is a bar of blue glass. You have to preheat this in a little pickup box to about 1,000 degrees, and then you stick it to the end of a pipe and put it into those big, what's called a reheating chamber or a glory hole. You can see Ben over there has 2 bars of color that he's melting down. So we have clear glass in the furnaces at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, but the bars start cold, so you have to heat them up and make them about that same temperature and then add them to your clear glass in layers. So this process that Peter Hermansson's using is all about the layering of glass. It's about adding layers and then sandblasting away parts of the layers to show the layer underneath. And you do that multiple times to get these different effects, and that technique is called a Graal. 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 But the Graal technique is a distinctive Swedish glass art method developed in 1916 by the master glass artist I don't know how to say his name. It's a Swedish name. I don't know how to say it. How do you say? I'm sorry. How do you say this name?
It's Knut Bergqvist. Knut is it's a knot in English, a knot.
Oh.
Like
Knut I can't.
Bergqvist.
Okay. I'm going to do my best to say that right. But that's the master glass blower at Orrefors in Sweden that created this method. It's inspired by Art Nouveau glasswork of French studios. The name Graal was chosen to evoke the Holy Grail's association with sacred imagery in Swedish glass. He's here for a residency to make more work. So he's making more of these works and finishing them so that he has a body of work to present different galleries. He came here because the Museum of Glass is a well-known place to do big residencies for artists. They have a full team of glass artists that will help him make his work. A lot of glass artists all over the world will come here to do residencies like this. So he came here from Sweden to do this, to work with this team, because this is one of the best glassblowing teams in the country. Yeah. If you guys have any questions at any time, just let me know. My name is Shannon. I'll be kind of explaining the process as we go. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Just so everyone has an idea of what's going on, we're working towards making this shape. It's like a little outline of the shape that we want to make for this first piece. They are currently getting all the color melted in and making the foot of the piece. So they're making this bottom part. The top part of the piece is in this pickup kiln, heating up to about 1,000 degrees. Once it's the right temperature and they're ready to take it out, they'll get a stick or a rod and get some glass on it. And hot glass will stick to other hot glass. So they'll use the glass on the end of the rod to stick it to the piece that's in the pickup kiln, take it out, put it in the fire, and then finish the shape. So they're making the bottom part so that they can take the top part out and put them together. They're just working on melting all of those rods of colored glass and adding them to the piece to get the colors for the foot. But it all starts in our furnace. We got 2 of them. So this is one of the furnaces. The other furnace looks like this, just on the other side. They're using the other furnace, not this one today. But that's where all the clear glass is. It sits in a big bowl. It's called a crucible. It's a high-fire ceramic bowl, and it holds about 1,000 pounds of clear glass. It sits in there at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So the whole time we're working with this glass, it's anywhere between 1,000 and 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. If it gets too much colder, the glass will break from thermal shock. So all the colors will look a little bit weird just because of the temperature. It'll all be kind of glowing orange. So they're melting all of those colors. This bar, or this rod, has 2 different color bars on the end. They just got to get it hot enough to add to the piece. So the colors start like this. This is just a rod of blue glass. They have little labels. We buy them at the store. Chemists make them for us. But they all have little labels on here that tell us what color they are, in case you can't see it. Some of the colors, like transparent colors, all look like this. So they have labels so that you know what it'll look like on the glass. So they're melting that color. They're going to add it to the piece over here. It might be hard to see them over there because of this machine. This is called a garage, and it's part of the process. It's kind of like the pickup kiln. It's around the same temperature, but it's called a garage because you can park pieces in there when you're not using them. To keep them in that window of temperature they have to stay in so the glass doesn't break. So they made some pieces. They put them in there to kind of put them on hold so we can make the other pieces. Glass blowing can be a lot of moving parts, can be very involved with a lot of different things all happening at the same time. So everything that we're working on is all for one piece, but there's just multiple parts that will all get put together at the right temperature and the right timing. Really, glass blowing is all about the temperature and timing. So they're working on getting that color just right and then adding it to this glass. So this is clear glass with the color encased inside of it, and then it has a bubble inside. You can't see the bubble because the color is covering it up, but it's in there. It all looks orange just because it's above 1,000 degrees, anywhere between 1,000 and 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. But they're going to add some of this color. When glass is hot, it's very stretchy and malleable. You can bend it and stretch it and twist it and pull it and cut it. So they're going to do all kinds of different stuff to make this pattern. And we're working on getting the screen up there on so you can see what's going on from different angles. We got cameras that will show you. So once that gets turned on, you'll be able to see a little bit more what's going on, because it can get kind of crowded in that area, makes it hard to see. But we'll get that done. But I can explain a little bit more what's going on here. Over there right now, they're building up layers of color to blow out a piece. These are pre-made pieces. Our artist, Peter Hermansson, is from Sweden, so he made all these in his studio in Sweden and brought them with him. Glass blowing is a layering process. So they're adding the layers of color. And then once the glass cools down, they take this with all the layers and they sandblast it to make all the layers underneath show through to create these images. It's like a multiple day process of being in the hot shop, working with the glass hot, and then once it cools, you can sandblast the layers. Then you heat it back up, add another layer of color, let it cool down, sandblast that layer over and over again until you get these images. He's got some of these in this box over here, heating up so that we can take them out and put them in the fire to change the shape and everything. These are just examples of some other ones so you can see them. He's going to be working on these during his residency here from the 1st through the 5th. So today's the first day of the residency. We're just getting started. If any of you have questions, just let me know. My name is Shannon. You can just yell at me. Yeah. And we're working on getting the screen back on so you can see from the different cameras, different points of views of what's going on. Because I know it's hard to see past our garage here. Most of what's going on is over there. Yeah. They're just building up the layers on a bubble. And then the clear glass is all in the furnace, and all the color looks like this. So they've got to melt these bars of color to the same temperature and then add them to the piece, building up those layers. And then they'll blow that out into what's called a blank. Once that blank cools down, they'll take it and sandblast the layers, like I was explaining, to make one of those pieces over there. Here we go. Now you can see. You can see that little stripe of that color they added on there is a layer over the color underneath it, encased in clear. So you can see those layers kind of floating inside each other, but as we blow the bubble, it'll stretch and expand, and they'll get closer together as the bubble gets bigger. Right now, Ben is picking bubbles out of the glass. We want one bubble in there, but sometimes you get little ones everywhere. You can pick them out, cut them out. So our artist today is Peter Hermansson. He's standing over there with the yellow sleeve. And the rest of the team is just the hot shop team that works here at the Museum of Glass. Really good, really talented team of glassblowers that are helping Peter make some of his work during his residency. He came here all the way from Sweden to make this work. So it's pretty cool that we get to see him in the studio.
Hi, I'm Peter. So I'm just going to show you something here, because the thing we are doing now, that we are making this shape, and now we're working on the foot. So we're making the foot, and then we're placing in a garage, and then we're going to make the big main piece here, and then later on put the foot on the piece. So that's what we're doing now.
So for anyone that just joined us, there's a page up there that's on that shield that shows you the shape we're working on. They're making the foot of the piece right now, so that bottom part. The top part is in that kiln right here, this big box, heating up to about 1,000 degrees, or like 950-ish Fahrenheit. We gotta preheat the glass before we can take it and put it in the fire. So that's preheating in there. This is gonna be the foot of the piece. So they're working on that shape. Once it's done, it'll go into this box here called the garage. That'll hold it at the temperature around 1,000 degrees. They'll take the other part out of the kiln, shape it, and attach the two pieces together. Glass blowing is all about temperature and timing, so they've got to line up the temperature and timing of the two separate pieces to put them together. So they're working on the shape of the foot. Our artist for today, or from today until the 5th of the month, we're doing a residency with our artist Peter Hermansson right here with the yellow sleeve on. He is a Swedish glass artist. He came here all the way from Sweden for this residency. He's highly regarded for his contemporary use of traditional Graal and Ariel techniques. So those pieces there give you examples of the Graal technique. We don't have any examples of the Ariel technique out here, but we'll get the screen on and you'll be able to see some of those images. So Peter Hermansson, following his formal studies at the Orrefors National Glass School in Sweden, he's dedicated 2 decades developing a graphically expressive graffiti style. Notably, Hermansson's unique graphic illustrations are transferred into the surface of the glass vessels through an etching technique, creating a powerful visual narrative. So that etching technique is a Graal, G-R-A-A-L. It has to do with building up layers of colored glass and then sandblasting those layers away or etching them away. It's a multiple day process where you heat up the glass, you add a layer of color, you cool down the glass, and then you etch the surface. You heat it back up, you add another layer, and repeat over and over again until you have these beautiful imagery on these pieces. These are some of the ones that he made in Sweden and brought with him. So during his residency, he'll be working on things like this. These aren't ones that we're going to be working on today, but we have them out so you can see his pieces. The ones we're working on today are in this box because the glass has to preheat before you can take it out and put it into the fire. When we work with the glass, it has to be in between a specific window of temperature. If it gets too cold, it will crack from thermal shock, and if it gets too hot, it'll just be really molten, moving around, kind of hard to control. So anywhere between 1,000 degrees and 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit is our window of temperature. And I know 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit sounds really hot, but that's actually very cold for glass. So it's a relative term. When I say cold, I just mean not molten. So we've got Peter Hermansson, our artist, and we have the hot shop team here at the Museum of Glass. They're very skilled, very talented artists, helping Peter make all of his work. Glass blowing is really a big team effort. You can make small things by yourself, but something like this would be impossible to do by yourself. You have to have a team of people helping you. So Peter Hermansson has come here all the way from Sweden to work with this team in this studio. It's his first time here, I believe, working in this studio. And today is the first day of his residency. If you're interested in learning more about our artist, he has an artist talk Sunday, July 5th from 1 to 2 here in the Hot Shop. If you can't make it to the Hot Shop, the Museum of Glass has a live stream. If you go to the museumofglass.org, it's under the Hot Shop tab. It'll lead you to the live stream where you can watch the talk if you can't make it to the building. I will be watching it, for sure. You can also, if you ever want to see what's going on here and can't make it, that live stream is happening anytime we're in here working. So you can always go to the museumofglass.org and look at that live stream. They've also got a YouTube channel that has the live stream. For those of you that have never been in a glassblowing studio before, we call it a hot shop. The hot shop is where you work with the glass when it's hot. There's also a cold shop where you work with the glass when it's cold. With the work that Peter Hermansson's doing for his residency, we do a little bit of both. So we're in the hot shop today making, there's a piece of paper up on that shield that shows you the shape we're working towards. We're making the foot of the piece right now. But if you're interested to see more of Peter's work, we've got some examples over here. These are called Graals, G-R-A-A-L. You start with what's called a blank. So you would start with this yellow one, it would just be all yellow. You would cover it up with some vinyl and then cut the vinyl to reveal the glass underneath. And then you sandblast it to show the color underneath. And it's a multiple day process where you come into the hot shop, you put a layer of color on the glass, you let it cool down, and then you take it and sandblast it, and then you bring it back in here and do that again to create multiple layers of color to create this beautiful imagery. So he's made these in his studio in Sweden and brought them with him so that we could finish the pieces here in our studio here. This is the foot of the piece. So right now they're doing what's called a punty transfer. The punty is just the name of the rod we're transferring the piece off to. So Gabe in the black hat has the punty. Ben at the bench is breaking the piece off the blowpipe to transfer it to the punty, which Gabe has. That flips the piece around so we can work on the other side of it. And that's all done with specific knowledge about the temperature and timing of the glass. So we used thermal shock to get the piece off the glass. We broke it in a controlled way. A lot of glass blowing is about temperature and timing. There's a lot of science behind glass blowing. So they flipped this around. Now we have a foot for our piece. There's a bubble inside there, so the spot where they broke it off the pipe has an opening. They're going to clean up the opening and then move on to the next part of the process. And all of these colors, when we're working with them, we've got all kinds of different colored glass over here you can see on this table. All of it will look orange when we're working with it over there because of the temperature of the glass. Even the clear glass looks orange when it's hot, and that's just because we're working with really high temperatures. Anywhere between 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit and 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. When you're blowing glass, you want to keep the glass in a specific window of temperature. If it gets too cold, it could break, and if it gets too hot, it's just really molten, moving around too much for you to control. So these guys are all really experienced in glass blowing as a team. Peter Hermansson came here from Sweden to work with this team, and he'll be here the 1st through the 5th of July. So if you're here during the 4th of July holidays, come check it out. We'll be open blowing glass. So you all might notice there's a lot of like talking, conversation going on between all the artists down here on the floor. Our lead artist, who is our resident artist, Peter Hermansson, is kind of he's the one that we're working towards making the vision of his work. So this is his work, and then the rest of the artists are the team that is helping him. Glass blowing isn't really something you can do by yourself. You're very limited in what you can do by yourself. So the more people are on the team, the more you can accomplish. We've got a big team here at the Museum of Glass. They're all here to help Peter make his work. Ben is sitting at the bench right now. He's helping shape the foot of our piece. We got a drawing over there on that shield that shows the shape we're going for. What we've got on the stick right now is the foot of the vase, or the piece. The other part of it is in this kiln over here, this big box. It's heating up to about 1,000 degrees. So we can take it out when we're ready. We'll put the two pieces together to make our final piece. But we're working towards that now, finishing up the shape of the bottom of the piece. So the foot of our piece right now is going to go into what's called the garage. It's that big silver thing here. Trent's putting it in there right now. That is where you park pieces to hold the temperature while you work on other parts of the piece. So the foot of the piece is going to rest in there at around 1,000 degrees, which will keep it hot so it doesn't break from getting too cold. But it'll keep it at the right temperature so that it doesn't change shape. It'll just sit in there at that temperature, kind of waiting until we're ready to take it back out. The other part of our piece is in that kiln over there. We're going to pick it up here soon. We just turn the temperature of that kiln up a little bit more to get that piece up to a good temperature that we can put it in the fire and start to work with it. If the glass is too cold and you try to introduce it to heat over about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, it's going to explode from thermal shock. So if you want to take a piece of glass and put it in there, you have to heat it up before you take it out of the kiln and then put it in the fire. That way it doesn't break. So they're working on getting ready to pick up the piece of glass that's heating up inside our kiln so we can put it in the fire get it the right temperature, and then attach the foot to the piece. The drawing on the shield up there is the shape that we're going for our piece. So they're working towards getting some glass on the end of this blowpipe. Ben is about to take a gather of clear glass. So that furnace is what keeps all of our clear glass molten. You scoop it out the same way you'd get honey out of a jar with a stick. And it's all clear glass. It just is going to look orange when it comes out because it's over 2,000 degrees. It's about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is clear molten glass. They're going to get that ready to stick it to the piece that's in the kiln, take it out, and start finalizing the shape to finish our piece. Right now, Ben just got more glass out of the furnace. He's using the pipe cooler. It cools the pipe. It's just a water trough. You put the metal of the pipe in that water trough, and it cools the metal so you can hold the pipe up higher, closer to the glass. So this is all clear molten glass right now. It looks orange just because of its temperature, but as it gets colder, it'll look more like clear glass. However, if it gets too cold, it'll break. So if this gets any colder than about 1,000 degrees, the glass will start to crack. So the whole time we're working with it, the glass is gonna look sort of orange. Ben is making what's called a collar. So he got a bunch of clear glass, he let it all fall onto the stick, and he blew a bubble into it. So now the pipe is hollow all the way through, and the bubble that he blew goes all the way through the pipe to make an opening. But there's still a lot of glass around the opening, so they can use the glass to pick up the piece that's in the kiln. It'll have a hole in it, so they can still blow through the pipe with all of the glass on it right now. That's called a collar. So they're gonna pick up the piece on the collar. The piece is sitting in the kiln over there at around 1,000 degrees. They'll pick it up and put it into the fire that Ben has the pipe in right now, and then they'll start to work on the shape. The foot of our piece is in the garage, which is this box. This is just gonna hold it at a good temperature. When you work with the glass, it has to be in this window of temperature between 1,000 and 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. If it gets too cold, it'll break. If it's too hot, it's just really hard to control because it's molten and moving around a bunch. So it sits in the garage for around about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like a holding temperature. Not too hot, not too cold. Once we take the piece out of the kiln and shape it up, we can also take the foot of the piece out of the garage and then put the two components together. So when you're blowing glass, making really intricate pieces like we're working on today with our artist in residence, there can be a lot of moving parts. That's why there's a lot of people on the floor. When you're blowing glass, it's like a team effort. You've got the artist whose vision we're working towards and the team that is helping that artist make the piece. So our artist is Peter Hermansson. He's wearing the yellow sleeve there. He's a Swedish glass artist. He came here all the way from Sweden to make these pieces. Some of his work that we're going to be working on during the residency is on this table. These are called Graals, G-R-A-A-L. It's a Swedish technique in glass blowing that involves layers, removing layers, adding layers to make these images. And glass blowing is all about temperature and timing. So it might seem like they're not really doing much right now, but they're aligning the temperature of the glass to work with the timing of how we're going to pick it up out of the kiln. Now we're getting the piece out of the kiln. Hot glass sticks to hot glass, so they're just sticking it on there, trying to line it up to where the hole on the piece and the hole on the pipe line up so we can blow through it. There's our Graal that we're taking out. Ben's taking it to the fire to heat it up, and now we can start to shape it into the shape that we have that drawing on this, the shield that's blocking the heat from just roasting Ben right now. So we got our Graal out. That's what we call these. These are Graals, G-R-A-A-L. It's a Swedish technique. The piece that he just took out has a similar pattern of the images on these pieces. So if you want a closer look of what they're doing, you can come check these out, see the imagery on them. But now that they've got this one hot and on the stick, they can start to shape it and blow it out a little bit. Make those curves that they have that drawing on there. And they're all going to work together as a team to make that happen. They're using what's called the reheating chamber, also known as the glory hole. It's just a big barrel of fire. It's a little bit hotter than the furnaces. It's around 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's used for reheating the glass. As it gets colder, it'll get stiffer, and if it gets too cold, it will break. So the reheating chamber helps us keep it in that window of temperature so we can work on it without breaking the glass. It gets it hot so it's malleable. That table is called a marver. It's used for shaping and cooling the glass. So if you roll the glass on that steel top table, it cools the skin of the glass and helps you shape it. Since it's so hot, we can't shape it with our hands. We have to use these tools like the marver and some of our metal tools on the bench over here that they're going to use to shape the glass. Right now they've got to melt it all. It's a pretty thick piece of glass, and the thicker it is, the longer it takes to heat up, but it also stays hotter longer because it's thicker. So heating it up right now is going to take a bit of time for them to get that hot. They're going to melt all those layers flush together by alternating between heating the glass up and rolling it on the marver until it's all smooth. If you can see our pieces over there, they have a texture on them because they're not melted all the way together. So they're working on melting those layers on the piece that we're working on now. That way it's flush and smooth to the surface, getting it all up to temperature to smooth it out and also get it hot enough to work on the shape.
Yeah. So will these pieces retain shape?
These pieces are going to get worked on during the residency that he's here. He'll be here the 1st through the 5th. So they'll be heated up and worked on a different day during the residency. So he'll make different shapes with those. He's got sketches of different shapes of things he wants to make while he's here. The one we're working on today is the one that's up there on that screen. So that's what he's working on now, and then he'll take these other ones and do different shapes, kind of like that as well. But he'll be here the 1st through the 5th, so we're really just getting started today. If you're not able to make it here every single day of his residency, you can also watch the live stream online. If you're interested in Peter Hermansson's work and just want to see the process and how it's all done, you can go to the live stream for the Museum of Glass and watch what they're doing. We've got cameras that will show the different areas so you can see it all happening. We're having technical difficulties with our screen today, so we're trying to get that up so you can see it. But Ben's rolling the piece on the marver. That's helping get all of those layers flushed together. And the hotter this gets, the more orange it's going to look. As it cools, it'll look more like the colors like these pieces over here. It's just when the glass is hot, it all looks orange regardless of what the color is actually supposed to be. Our colors start like this. This table, if you can see over here, has a bunch of Peter's colors that he wants to use during his residency. So if we wanted to make our glass red, we would take a red bar of glass. You'd put it in either the garage, or we have like little pickup kilns that are really small that you can put these in. You would pick this up on the end of a rod with a little bit of clear glass on it, and you'd have to put this into the reheating chamber they're using now to melt it down to the same temperature as the clear glass. Once it's molten, then you can add it to your piece. So glass blowing is really a lot of layering. It's so hot in the furnace, you can't scoop it all out at once. You have to build it up in layers, and you can add color in between the layers of clear glass. And then like what Peter does with his work, you can carve away, etch away the layers to show the color underneath and make different patterns, designs, and images. That technique is called a Graal. It's a Swedish technique. And our artist today, Peter Hermansson, is from Sweden. So he made all of these in Sweden and then brought them with him to finish the shapes and finish the final pieces here with our team. The team at the Museum of Glass is really, really talented, really experienced glass artists, like Ben here who has the piece. Very talented, very experienced artist. And there's a lot of them here on the floor right now, all helping Peter make his work. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me. My name is Shannon. You can just shout my name out, get my attention. So since this is a really big piece of glass, it's really thick, this process goes kind of slow where you have to heat it up and you roll it on the table to get rid of the texture of the layers. You kind of smooth it all out. It just takes a little bit of time for that to happen because this is a lot of glass. So with glass blowing, the glass is hot and molten, and gravity always wants to pull it to the ground. So we counteract that by continually rotating the pipe. Our benches have 2 rails that the pipe rests on, and no matter what else you're doing, you have to keep turning the pipe the whole time. So it's a lot of multitasking, a lot of ambidextrous things going on, lots and lots of multitasking. Doesn't seem like much, but there's a lot of nuances in glass blowing. He's got a lot going through his head while he's trying to turn the pipe, plan his next move. It's a lot of planning, a lot of thinking ahead. So you can see on this, you can see those patterns that we made through that Graal technique. It creates those images. They're discussing their plan for the next thing they're going to do. I think they're going to take this bit of color and add it to the piece. So Trent has a stick with colored glass on the end of it. He's getting that hot and molten enough so that we can drip it onto the piece and add it to create some more color patterns. So the glass, when it's hot, is stretchy. Also, hot glass sticks to other hot glass. So they're going to stick this on and drag it down to create a line of color on the piece, kind of building up that material and finishing off the design a little bit. Now they'll just need to melt that in a little bit, maybe add some more color. Oh, hello. So welcome in this big group of kids. How many of you have been in a hot shop before? Is it your first time, or have you been here before? Awesome. First time for you? Cool. Let me start from the beginning so you can get an idea of what's going on. So in the glass blowing studio, we have 2 furnaces that hold clear glass at a molten temperature. They sit at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So all the clear glass, when it's hot, looks orange, but you start with clear glass. And if you want to add the color, all of this down here is glass color. So this is a rod of red glass. You would put this on the end of a stick, and you'd put it in the fire, melt it until it's the same temperature as the clear glass, and then you can add it to your piece. So what we're doing today is pretty intricate work. Our glass artist's name is Peter Hermansson. He's a Swedish glass artist. He's the one at the bench right now, sitting at the bench. That's Peter. He's here for a residency. So today until the 5th of July, he'll be in here working on his pieces. This is the first day of his residency, so this is the first piece that we're making. They're adding some glass color. So this is an example of how you get the color on the glass. You have the separate rods. They heated them up, and now they're striping bits of that color onto the piece. When glass is hot, it is stretchy and malleable. It also can stick to other hot glass. So this piece is anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 degrees right now. They got the bits of color really hot and stripe them on there. Now they can melt all that together, and there's a bubble inside there. They can blow the bubble out to shape the glass. What we're working on right now is making this piece. There's a drawing of the shape of what we're working towards on that big shield. They made the bottom of it, the little foot of our piece, is sitting in this big box here. This is called a garage. That's where you park pieces when you're not working on them. It keeps them at the right temperature. So everything in the garage is around 1,000 degrees or higher, and that's just holding it in there so that it doesn't break. If the glass gets too cold, it breaks. So we have to keep it in there at the right temperature so that doesn't happen. Once these two pieces are ready, they'll put them together. So we're working on one part of the piece while the garage is holding the other part. When we're ready, we'll take the bottom of the piece out of the garage and we'll attach it to the main body of the piece that we have right now. The building is shaped like a cone. Have you seen it from the outside? It's a big cone. That's how it was made. That's a torch. That's called a fluffy torch. It's used to help keep the glass hot. So the glass that's on the pipe it stays on all the time when we're working with it. But the glass on the pipe gets colder because it's attached to the pipe. So that helps maintain the temperature of the glass closer to the pipe. If the glass gets too cold, it's going to crack. So we have to keep it at the right temperature so that doesn't happen. So right now they're just adding a bunch of stripes of color to the piece, giving it a little more of a design. It looks red because it's really hot. That color that they're using, I believe, is orange and red. They kind of have it all together like this on the end of the pipe. So they got multiple colors on there. They're heating it up, and then they're adding it to the piece. When glass is hot, it's like taffy. It's stretchy. So they're attaching it, pulling it, stretching it, and then cutting it. You can cut through hot glass. So for those of you that joined us recently, let me tell you a little bit more about our glass artist today. Today we have a visiting artist named Peter Hermansson. He's the one with the yellow sleeve that just cut that bit of glass off. He's a Swedish glass artist. He's a Swedish glass master, highly regarded for his contemporary use of traditional Graal and Ariel techniques. Those are Swedish techniques in glass blowing. The Graal technique is these patterns that you're seeing on these pieces. It has to do with layering the glass and then sandblasting or etching away at the layers to show the layer underneath. So it's a multiple day process of multiple layering and removing the layers to create these images. But the Ariel technique is a way to trap bubbles in the glass that also can make imagery out of the bubble. We're not working on that right now. We're using a Graal today. But following his formal studies at the Orrefors National Glass School in Sweden, Hermansson has spent 2 decades developing this graphically expressive graffiti style on his work. Notably, Hermansson's unique practice illustrations are transferred into the surface of the glass vessels through this etching technique. It creates that visual narrative. So he's really adding some details to the surface right now with a hot torch and a string of glass, melting that little string and adding bits to the piece.
So we may not have it.
So we've been having technical difficulties with our screen up here today. We're going to pull this one out so you can see this screen while we're trying to figure out that one. So what we're working on right now, there's an outline or a drawing up there on that shield. This piece is going to be the main part of it, the bigger part, and we have the foot of the piece in this silver box. This is called a garage. The garage is holding the other part of the piece at the right temperature so that it doesn't break. At the right temperature and timing, we can take it out and we'll add them together. We still got quite a bit of work to do on this one though before we attach the other piece. So Gabe right now is using the marver, which is that big steel top table that helps shape and cool the glass. So they heat this bubble up inside the reheating chamber there, right behind them, that big barrel of fire. When it's the right temperature, they'll take it and roll it on the marver, and that will help flatten all those layers of glass to really flush the surface to where it's all flat. The thicker the glass is, the longer it takes to heat up, and this piece is pretty thick. So they're going between getting the glass hot and then rolling it on the marver just to get the surface of it flush. And once it's all flush and flat, we can start to blow the bubble that's inside the glass. There's a bubble in there, you just can't see it because all those layers of color are covering up the bubble. But it's in there. We're gonna start blowing it out when they're ready. These pieces are all going to be a body of work for our visiting artist, Peter Hermansson. Peter is the one with the yellow sleeve on right there, with the gray hair and the navy blue button-up. That's our visiting artist from the 1st through the 5th of July. He'll be in here making his work. He came here all the way from Sweden to work with this team in the museum. Our team in the museum is a lot of highly trained, very skilled glass artists that are assisting him in making his work. Glassblowing is really like a team sport. You can't really make much by yourself, especially at this scale. So the more artists you have helping you, the more you can accomplish. We've got a good amount of people on the floor today helping Peter make his work. We've been working on this piece since about 10:15 this morning.
So where does all the glass start from?
So the way it all starts, we've got 2 furnaces here. We're using the furnace on this side of the studio today. The furnace just holds about 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass inside of it. You scoop it out the same way you'd get honey out of a jar. You get your stick and you scoop the glass out on the end of the stick. And it's a layering process. You build up the glass in layers. It's so hot in the furnace, you can't just scoop it all out at once. You got to do it a little bit at a time. But it sits in the furnace at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. You scoop it out, and when it's out here, out of the furnace, it gets colder and stiffer. And you can work with it in a specific window of temperature. That Marver table does get very hot. You don't want to sit on that. But this torch that Ben is using right now, he's torching what's called the moil. The moil is the glass that's on the pipe, and the piece is the glass that's off the end of the pipe. So the moil will not be part of the final piece, but it's necessary to hold the piece onto the pipe so we can work on it. So he's torching the moil because if the moil gets too cold, it'll start to crack, and that crack could travel up into the piece. So that torch just gets the moil nice and hot, that way it doesn't break. If the glass gets too cold, it'll break from thermal shock. Doesn't matter how long you've been working on the glass, if it gets too cold, it breaks. And you can work on the same piece of glass all day as long as you keep it at the right temperature. This piece we've been doing since about 10:15 this morning. It's a pretty big, intricate piece, so it'll take a couple of hours probably. How much does it weigh? I couldn't tell you exactly, but it feels heavier on the end of a pipe because there's that fulcrum. It's like the difference between holding a bowling ball in your hand and holding it in a shovel at the end of the shovel. It feels heavier on the stick. I want to guess it's probably about 10 pounds of glass, but it feels way more than that on the end of the stick. Oh, 25 pounds. So the smoke is steam coming off the tool he's using right now. The tool he just used is newspaper folded up and soaked in water. So a wet pad of newspaper is a glass blowing tool. The steam is the water evaporating immediately because of how hot the glass is. And as long as the pad of newspaper is wet, you can touch it to the glass and it's not hot in your hand. It's kind of the same concept as wet firewood won't catch on fire. A wet pad of paper won't catch on fire because the water creates steam. And there's a thin layer of steam in between the glass and the wet newspaper. And that's really what's shaping the glass. So there's a lot of science behind glass blowing. That's called the Leisenfrost effect. So right now, the team is all working together to carve in a line called the jack line. Every piece of glass you make has to have this line because that's how we get it off the pipe when we're done with it. We're creating a restriction line where we can remove the piece by actually breaking it in a controlled way on that line. The tool that we're using is called the jacks. That's why it's called the jack line. It's like a score mark so we can get the piece off the pipe later. So they're all working together on this piece. We've got two guys turning the pipe. Ben was squeezing in that restriction line. And Stina over here has these drywood paddles that we're using to shield Ben. That's a lot of glass. There's a lot of heat radiating off of it. So using the drywood paddles, you can shield by blocking the heat from their skin. You just put the paddle in between the glass and their skin and it shields the heat so that they can work on the glass without getting too hot. This piece, especially because of how thick it is, there's a lot of radiating heat coming off of it. It's really, really hot. It can get really spicy when your hands are like inches away from it. So Stina is shielding Ben's hand. Ben is also wearing an aluminized sleeve, which is similar to some of the gear that firefighters wear. It just shields you from the heat. And this piece is attached to a blowpipe, which is like a big metal straw. So it's hollow all the way through. They're starting to blow it out a little bit. So the whole team is working on this piece. We got Ben carving in the jack line. Stina is shielding Ben. Peter, our main artist, is helping turn the pipe. And Gabe is blowing into the pipe when Ben tells him to. So there's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, a lot of communication to make this piece happen. So this torch that Ben has been using, that's called a fluffy torch. All the glass that's on the pipe is the moil. If the moil gets too cold, the glass starts to crack, and that crack can travel up into the piece. So the fluffy torch helps keep the glass closer to the pipe and on the pipe hot enough that they don't crack. The glass on the pipe and closer to the pipe are cooling down more because of the metal and because it's the last thing in the fire and the first thing out, which does, over time, build up a big difference in temperature. So that fluffy torch helps equalize the temperature a little bit more. That way, the whole piece of glass stays close to the same temperature, and we can blow out the glass and it expands evenly. So they've started to blow the bubble that's inside there. They're doing it little by little, so it's not going to be a big dramatic change. They're blowing the air that's slowly expanding the glass and making it bigger. They're working towards making the shape of that piece of paper that's on that shield. This is the top portion of it. They've got to blow the bubble and start to shape it and make those curves. And then the bottom portion of the piece is resting in that big silver box. That's called a garage. It's holding the temperature of the piece so that it doesn't get too cold and break. Once the shape of this is good and the temperature is good, they'll take the bottom part of the piece out of the garage, line up the temperatures, and then stick them together. Hot glass will stick to other hot glass. So they're going to get them all the right temperature, put them together, and then finish off the shape. Never mind, there's not going to be a foot on this piece. So the tip of this bubble that's farthest away from the pipe will be the bottom of the piece. They're working on this sideways. The top of the piece is what's holding it onto the blowpipe. So they're working on the shape of the piece, getting the bottom of it to the right shape. Once they like the bottom, they'll take it off the pipe and we'll finish the top part. But we're a bit away from that happening. Right now, Ben is using the torch to heat up the top of the piece and an air gun to blow air on the bottom to cool the bottom down. The tip of that bubble is the first thing in the fire and the last thing out, so it gets hotter than the rest of it. Blowing air on it will help cool it down, which will help equalize the temperature. So we're always thinking about the temperature of the whole piece. Parts of it get colder, parts of it get hotter, and you have to control which part of it is hot to change the shape that you want it to be. So it's all about the thermal dynamics and the temperature of the glass. You can control it by using these different torches, the air gun, the reheating chamber, We've got all the equipment here that they need to make these really intricate, detailed pieces. Right now, Ben is using gravity as one of his tools. He's just hanging the glass down. When the glass is hot, if you hang it down, gravity will stretch it. So he's stretching the piece out, trying to make it a little bit taller, just by letting gravity do the work. You get it hot enough, he's just hanging it down off the edge of that rail. Gravity's slowly elongating it, making it a little bit taller. So now they've gotten a little more heat on it. You might be able to tell that it's stretching and getting taller. It's not a big dramatic change, but it's stretching a little bit. And now Ben is smoothing out the sides of it to make it all nice and symmetrical. You can even tell by the color that the bottom of the piece is hotter than the top. This piece is going to be kind of like a seafoam green color. The colder parts look like that. The hot parts are orange. And if you can't really see what's going on down here, we've got the screen back on. You can see it up there. You can really check out the details of the imagery really well in the screen. Sorry, what was the question? How does it start? So the glass starts in a furnace. And you scoop it out the same way you get honey out of a jar, and then you build it up in layers. When glass is molten, you can really do whatever you want to it. As long as it's hot enough, you can shape it. Yeah.
Story behind the imagery on the glass.
Yeah, I can read you guys a little bit more about our artist here to give you an idea. So Peter Hermansson, he's the one with the yellow sleeve on his arm with the navy blue button up. He's a Swedish glass master, highly regarded for his contemporary use of traditional Swedish techniques called Graal and Ariel. Following his formal studies at the Orrefors National Glass School, Hermansson has spent 2 decades developing a graphically expressive graffiti style. Notably, his unique graphic illustrations are transferred onto the surface of the glass vessels through an etching technique. But it's like a narrative storytelling graffiti based. He has a graffiti background.
I was wondering, like, if you knew the story behind this specific one. Like, it looked like a man. It kind of looked like.
So the team is starting to work on the shape of this piece. They're going to flatten the bottom of it here pretty soon. The bottom of it is the part that's farthest away from the pipe. The part that is closest to the pipe will end up being the top of the piece. And a glass bubble, like any other bubble, wants to be round. So we have to flatten the spot that's going to sit on the table. They're working towards getting the glass hot enough that they can push on that part to flatten the round end. But they have to maintain the temperature of the whole thing. So Peter is our artist, Peter Hermansson. He's the one with the pipe with the piece on it right now. He's alternating between focusing the heat on the bottom where we want to change the shape and then flashing the whole thing. A flash is like a maintenance heat because if the glass gets too cold, it'll break. We have to maintain a certain temperature through the entire piece, even the parts that we're not working on. So Ben is shaping the piece. Stina's got just a dry wood paddle pushing on the bottom to create the flat spot. And Trent is at the other end of the pipe. He's doing what's called capping, which is trapping all the air in the pipe. That gives Stina air pressure to push against to make the piece flat. So we're still working on flattening the bottom of the piece. Because this is a really large piece, it's pretty thick. The thicker the glass is, the longer it takes to heat up. It stays hotter longer, but it's a bigger piece to handle, so you do it little by little. So we're working on the shape. We're going to finish flattening the bottom, and we eventually need to take this piece off of the blowpipe so that we can work on the top of it. We're working towards that now, but we've got to flatten the bottom of the piece first. So Stina's got a paddle. She's going to push on the glass to flatten it. Trent is trapping the air in the pipe on the other end of the pipe. Ben is shaping the glass. We're torching it. We're rotating the pipe. There's a lot going on right now. So you notice they only have so much time to work on the glass before they have to put it back in this fire. If the glass gets too cold, it will break. So we have to keep it in a specific window of temperature. Cold for glass blowing is 1,000 degrees. So if the glass gets under 1,000 degrees, that's too cold, it'll break. The glass doesn't care how long you've been working on it. If it gets cold, it will break. So every now and then, they have to flash the whole thing in the fire. We've also got a torch over here. torching the glass that's on the pipe. The glass that's attached directly to the pipe is getting colder than the rest of it because of the metal. You have to torch that part. If it gets too cold, it'll start to crack, and that crack could travel up onto the piece. So it's a big team effort. Peter Hermansson is our artist. He's the one with the pipe right now. The rest of the team out here is the glassblowing team that works at the museum. It's a very highly skilled, professional team of glass blowers that is helping Peter make his work. So they go back and forth between working on the glass at the bench, and then once it starts to get too cold, they have to heat it back up in the fire. So it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of communication, and a lot of teamwork. This is a really intricate, really detailed, highly skilled piece that we're making today. So there is a lot happening all at once. For anyone that's joined us recently and didn't hear me explain this earlier, I can give you a little bit of background on our artist. Could we show some of Peter's past work up on the screen? So here are some finished pieces by our artist. Peter Hermansson is a Swedish glass master. He's highly regarded for his contemporary use of traditional Graal and Ariel techniques, which are Swedish glassblowing techniques. Following his formal studies at the Orrefors National Glass School, which is in Sweden, Hermansson has spent 2 decades developing a graphically expressive graffiti style. Notably, Hermansson's unique graphic illustrations are transferred onto the surface of his glass vessels through an etching technique, creating this powerful visual narrative. You can learn more about this artist on his website, which is peterhermansson.com, or his Instagram, Hermansson_P. There's going to be an artist talk on Sunday, July 5th, from 1 to 2 o'clock here in the hot shop. You're also invited to watch it on the live stream if you can't make it into the building. The museumofglass.org, underneath the hot shop tab, will lead you to our live stream. You can also find it on YouTube. But if you want to hear Peter himself talk more about his work, Sunday, July 5th from 1 to 2, he'll be in here doing an artist talk, giving more details about the work that he's making and really explaining his process and his thoughts behind the work. We have other examples of his work that he's going to be doing here during his residency from the 1st through the 5th of July. This is his first day of the residency. So this is the first piece. These are some of our other pieces that have been prepped and are ready to start blowing out into different shapes. So this started like these. These are called Graal blanks. Graal is the technique of layering and etching away at the layers to create these images. So they started like this. These go into a kiln similar to this one, and this kiln gets turned up to about 1,000 degrees. Then you can take clear glass on the end of a stick and pick it up like this one. Hot glass will stick to hot glass. So they took clear glass when it was really hot. They opened this door and they stuck it to the top of the piece, took it out and put it into that fire to start working on it. So each of these pieces has to preheat in the kiln before we can work on it. If we took this cold bit of glass and put it in the fire, it would thermally shock and explode. So you have to preheat the glass before you put it in this really high temperature fire. To cool the glass, so once they're done with the piece, these big black boxes over here, you've got some on that side and on this side. We're using that one today. It'll cool slowly inside that box. That's called an annealing oven. So the glass will anneal, which is just the slow cooling process. Glass has to change temperature gradually. If it gets too hot too fast, it breaks. If it gets too cold too fast, it breaks. So once this is done, it'll go into the annealing oven, which will systematically slowly turn it down or cool it down by controlling the temperature inside. There's a computer box on the side of it that will put the program into, and it will systematically cool the glass down. The thicker the glass is, the faster, I'm mixing it up. The thicker the glass is, the longer it needs to cool. So this will be in the annealer for a couple of days, cooling down slowly, because these pieces are really big, they're pretty thick, so they'll be in the annealer for a while. But once it comes out of the annealer, those colors are going to be a lot brighter. All of the colors tend to look a little bit orange or brownish when they're hot. It'll be like bright red, bright orange, seafoam green, black, and white. That seafoam green looks pretty close to what it's supposed to, but the rest of it looks a little different than the colors are supposed to be, and that's just because of the temperature. The colors like to hide behind the heat. So those parts that look kind of brown and red are going to be orange and bright red. Right now we're about to do what's called the punty transfer. Gabe has our punty, and since this piece is really big, the punty has to be really big. So it's just clear glass. They're doing what's called a crown punty. So a little bit of glass off the end of the pipe is the crown. We have to take it off the punty when we're done. So we're going to carve in a line in the punty so we can break it off the pipe on that line. So Ben is carving in that line. To take it off of the blowpipe, we're going to break the line that's attached to the pipe on the other end. So utilizing thermal shock will break the glass on purpose in a controlled way. We're going to put water on that line right off the head of the pipe. The water will create tiny little cracks in the glass. It will shock it and create these little micro cracks. And then you can hit the pipe with a tool. The vibrations will go into the weak spot where we put the water, and it'll break it off the pipe. So don't blink, they're about to do it right now. There goes the water creating the little cracks. They'll take it off the pipe and Gabe will catch it on the punty. And now we've flipped the piece around. Yeah, give him a big hand. That's a hard thing to do. Especially with a piece that size, it's heavy. And the temperature and timing has to be just right. If they did that at the wrong temperature and timing, they could lose the piece. It could break. So it worked. They can finish the top of the piece now. So the bottom of the piece is now what's attached to the pipe. We flipped it around. We can work on the top. So we're going to finish the shape to be kind of like the drawing that's attached to the shield there. That big piece of paper has like a silhouette outline of the shape they're going for. They've got to make sure that punty is centered up on the piece. It's kind of like working on a clay wheel. It needs to be symmetrical, but we're doing it sideways. So they just have to make sure that punty connection is in the middle. There's a lot going on during the transfer, so sometimes you don't get it exactly in the right spot. They're working on fixing that to make it nice and symmetrical. But now where they broke it off the pipe, they've been blowing into the glass. The top of it is now hollow. They can reach inside the piece, not just work on the outside. So right now they're just working on building up the heat in the glass. We had to get it pretty cold to break it off the pipe, and now the coldest part needs to get to be the hottest part. So they're just waiting for it to heat up. And since it's a thick piece of glass, it's going to take a little bit longer to heat up. The thicker it is, the longer it takes to heat up and the longer it takes to cool down. And this piece is about an inch thick all the way around. So it's going to take them a minute just to get this heat built up so they can work on the top. Since they broke it off of the blowpipe, it doesn't break in a perfect line. The top of the piece is kind of broken and jagged, so they need to clean up that breaking point. So if they get the glass really hot, they can clean that edge up and then start to work on the shape. So they're working on getting that hot. Every now and then you'll see Gabe, who has the pipe, he'll push the whole thing into the fire, and that's called a flash. It's got to keep the whole thing up to temperature. Just because we're done with the bottom half of the piece doesn't mean we can forget about it and let it get cold. If it gets too cold, it'll break, so we have to keep it up to at least 1,000 degrees. So a flash is a maintenance heat to make sure the whole thing stays up to temperature. That way it doesn't break from thermal shock. Gabe is the one with the pipe right now. He's one of the guys on the team at the museum. Peter is our lead artist. He's our artist in residence right now. Peter Hermansson. He's the one here with the yellow sleeve. He came here all the way from Sweden to work with this glass team because the team here at the museum is a lot of highly skilled, very talented glass artists. And to make things this intricate, you need a good team who knows how to work with the glass. So it looks like the lip of our piece is starting to get hot. It's starting to move a little bit. We're getting close to the temperature being right where they can sit at the bench and start to work on that shape. And you can work on the same piece of glass for an entire 8-hour day as long as it stays at the right temperature. So this piece we've been working on this piece since about 10:15 this morning. Once it's finished, we'll take it off of the pipe it's attached to and put it into the big black box on that side of the stage. Not stage, studio. So this big black box, we're not using this one today, but it's the same thing. It's called an annealing oven. The glass has to cool down slowly so that it doesn't break. So the annealing oven cools the glass down slowly over time. It's got a computer system on it that heats up the inside of the box, and then it systematically cools it down over time. You can program it to have different lengths of time that it anneals. These pieces, since they're really big and really thick, will probably be in there a couple of days, cooling down. So Ben was using some tweezers to pull and stretch the lip of that piece out. It makes it a little bit thinner, and then they'll go in with some shears, which are glass cutting scissors. When glass is hot, you can cut through it with scissors. So they're going to trim off the uneven part of the piece on the top, and then it'll be nice and symmetrical and uniform up there. So they're getting it nice and hot so they can cut it. As the glass cools, it gets stiffer. So they have to do this cut when the glass is really hot. If it gets too cold, they can't cut through the glass and it's just breaking it. So they've got to build up that temperature pretty aggressively to trim through that edge to make it nice and even. When Gabe brings the glass out of the reheating chamber, you can tell which part is hotter based on the color. The part that's glowing more orange is much hotter than the part that looks more like the color the glass is supposed to be. All the colors look orange when they're hot. So the hottest part of that, you can definitely tell. It's really hot, moving around. We're going to shape that up, make it a little easier to cut, and then we'll go in there with some scissors and cut through the hot glass. So now Ben is going for the cut. You might not be able to see very well because his hands are so close to that glass. We have to shield his fingers from the heat coming off the glass. But he's cutting through the glass right now with the scissors. That big chunk of glass is going to fall on the ground, and now the edge of the piece is nice and uniform. As that chunk cools down, you'll see those colors come out. But since that piece of glass we just cut off is not getting annealed, it is unstable. It will break into a bunch of little pieces eventually. So now that we've cleaned up that edge, we can start to change the shape. Ben has a pair of jacks. He's got the jacks inside that opening, starting to shape the glass a little bit. We're torching the punty so that it doesn't get too cold and break. Right now, we're just building up the temperature. So since this is a very thick piece of glass, building up that temperature takes a little bit longer. They're going back and forth between having the piece at the bench, using the torch, shaping it, and then reheating it, getting the whole thing hot, but focusing the heat on specific parts of the glass. So we're really focusing on the top half right now, while maintaining the temperature of the bottom of the piece, the back end. That torch is used to maintain the temperature on the back. If the back of it gets too cold, it breaks from thermal shock. We work in a specific window of temperature. Right now, we're adding what's called a lip wrap to the piece. So we're adding a band of color around the lip of the piece. That way, it looks really clean and finished. When glass is hot, it's stretchy, so you literally wrap it, stretch it, wrap it around the lip of the piece. So they're wrapping it around. We've got that band of color around there. Now we'll just clean it up, make it nice and uniform. And then they'll open the lip out a little bit, kind of fine-tune the shape while maintaining the temperature and the whole thing. Now we've got our nice band of color around the top for a nice lip wrap. So that lip wrap is going to be a bright red. When the glass is hot, red looks kind of brown and dull, but when the glass cools down, the red colors will be very bright and vibrant, like this little string of red glass. This is the color they just put on there. It just doesn't look like this when it's hot. All the colors look orange when they're 2,000 plus degrees. So when they're finished with the piece, they're going to remove it from the punty, the stick that it's on right now, the same way they got it off the blowpipe that it was on earlier. They'll put water on the punty connection where we carved in that line. That'll shock the glass, and then they'll break it off the pipe. That part on the bottom will then get cold worked. Kristen, our cold worker, is standing right here. She'll clean up the bottom of that piece so that it's nice and flat. So the punty, a part of the punty will come off with the piece, and then we'll cold work that part off. The hot shop is where you work with the glass when it's hot. The cold shop is where you work with the glass where it's cold. You can grind and polish and cut the glass. So our cold worker here at the studio, Kristen, is going to clean up the bottom half where we break the piece off the punty, and then it will be finished. So the team here is really working together to create this nice shape. We've got Gabe turning the pipe, Trent is torching the punty, Ben is shaping the top, and Stina is using the drywood paddle to either shield Ben's hands or help keep the top of that piece nice and symmetrical. So it's really a team effort, especially when you're making something this scale, this level of glass blowing is very advanced. So you've got a big team to be able to accomplish all of this. Looks like we're about to use a tool called the Sophietta. Trent here in the black hat and the black shirt is holding our Sophietta. It's a cone attached to a straw. We'll put the cone in the opening of the piece. You can blow through the straw and it will still inflate the glass even though it's not on a blowpipe anymore. That tool is going to help us fine-tune the shape of the piece. So they're heating it up, that way they can use the Sophietta to blow into the glass, expand it, and work on that shape, really fine-tuning the top part of the piece. It won't be a huge difference. It'll be a very subtle change in the shape, but it will expand parts of the glass that are hotter. So that's what we're working towards now. So if you can't see what's going on from where you're sitting, if you look up at the screen, it might give you a better idea. We've got the cone of the Sophietta in the opening, and Trent is blowing through the Sophietta to inflate the glass. Ben, who's sitting at the bench, is directing everybody else on what they need to do, when to blow into the piece, when to stop doing that, telling Gabe how fast to rotate the pipe, up and down the rails. A lot of communication going on. So now they've really fine-tuned that shape. They're going to start opening the top of the piece up to make the shape that's drawn on that piece of paper on the shield there. We're going to start opening the lip of the piece out to make it more of that open shape like it's drawn on that piece of paper. They had to fine-tune some parts of it before they start to change the shape pretty dramatically, and now we're ready to do that. So Ben has a pair of parchofis. The parchofis are basically like the pair of jacks that we used to carve into the glass earlier, but they have wet wooden dowels instead of metal blades. Those wet wooden dowels will make a softer edge on the glass. They're also less aggressive on the glass because it's wood instead of metal. So we're going to use those to open the lip of this piece out to really dramatically change that shape. We just got to get the glass hot enough to do that. So we're heating it up right now. torching the punty so it doesn't get too cold and crack, flashing the piece to maintain the temperature in the whole thing. We'll sit it at the bench on the rails and start to open up the lip of the piece. When the glass is hot, it's really malleable, and you can open it by applying pressure with the right tool. So this part's going to look pretty cool when they start to open the lip of the piece. It'll change the shape pretty dramatically. It'll really stretch that glass out. Got to clean up that edge first. Now in with those wooden dowels, applying upwards pressure is going to open the lip of that piece a little bit at a time. You can see that opening is getting bigger. We are using wooden tools right now, so if they catch on fire, that is expected. So you can see now they're flaring the lip of that piece out pretty dramatically. So really finalizing that shape. So we're getting pretty close to be finished with this piece. Once it's done, we'll take it off of the rod that it's on and put it into what's called the annealing oven. So we've got two annealers in here. They're both on the far edges of the studio. One's over here. We're using the one on the far left side of the studio if you're facing them right now. So over on that end of the studio, our annealer sits at about 950 degrees. That's like a holding temperature for the glass. It's hot enough that it doesn't break, but it's cold enough that it's not going to change shape. Everything we make today will get put into the annealing oven and cool down slowly over a couple of days. Once it comes out of the oven, or once it comes out of the annealer, we can take it into the cold shop where we can grind and polish the bottom of the piece and clean up the spot where we're going to remove it from the punty. We got to make sure this whole piece is around the same temperature as the inside of the annealer though. So we need to equalize the temperature of the whole thing before we put it into the box. The edge of it that we're working on right now is much hotter than the back end. So that torch that Trent has is helping us equalize the temperature so that it's all around the same 950 degrees when we put it into the annealer. If you put it in there at the wrong temperature, it could go into the annealer at one piece, but when you take it out of the annealer, it could break from being the wrong temperature when you load it. So it's very important that it's the right temperature when we put it away. And equalizing that temperature is going to take a few times in and out of the reheating chamber. So that's really what we're doing right now, is making sure it's all the right temperature before we put it away. Ben is sitting at the bench right now, and he's kind of helping finalize this shape. He's shaping the glass with a wet pad of newspaper. So if you soak some newspaper in water and fold it up, it becomes a glass blowing tool. And it's similar to how if firewood is wet, it won't catch on fire. So wet newspaper won't catch on fire. And it won't be hot in your hand as long as it's soaked in water. So that's a pretty crazy glass blowing tool, wet newspaper. So we're getting ready to load this piece away into the annealing oven. Our annealing oven sits at 950 degrees. And for glass blowing, that is cold, but for people, that's still really hot. So we're gonna load it into the oven. Trent is over here putting on all the safety gear to be able to physically put half of himself into the 950-degree oven so that we can load the piece inside the box. So we have aluminized sleeves. That's what Ben just took off his arm. We also have Kevlar gloves. Kevlar is a heat-resistant material. So the gloves that we put on will be able to grab the piece, walk it over to the annealer, and put it inside. The piece is going to be around that same 950 degrees as the inside of our annealing oven. So we need to have heat-resistant gloves to be able to grab something at that temperature. These colors that are on the piece are going to become very vibrant, bright colors. Like the color banding around the edge of the piece will be bright red, and those darker stripes of color will be red and orange. Really bright, vibrant, beautiful red and orange colors. So we're really torching the back end of the piece. The front, or the top of the piece is thinner. It's also the first thing inside the fire and the last thing outside. So the bottom of it, closer to the pipe, is colder than the top. We're equalizing that temperature by using this torch. Once it's all about the same temperature is when we can take it off of the pipe and put it into the annealing oven, which is what we're gearing up to do right now. Trent has all of the protective gear he needs on to grab the piece and put it in the annealer. We're going to torch it one more time, give it one more flash of heat, and then remove it from the pipe. We've been working on this one piece since 10 a.m., so it's been a long few hours working on this one piece, but we're just about done. The longest part of the process is that annealing process. The glass has to cool slowly, and the thicker it is, the longer its annealing process needs to be. So this will probably stay in the annealer for at least a full 24 hours, if not 48 hours, cooling down systematically. The annealer has a computer attached to it that systematically lowers that temperature over time. So everything we make today will go into that big black box over there behind Stina on the far left of the studio. This is the first finished piece of the day. Now we're getting ready to take it off the punty. This torch is a especially hot torch. It's going to get the punty extra hot so that we can carve that restriction line in a little bit more, and that'll make it easier to break off the pipe on that really small restriction line. This can be a stressful part of the process. They've got to make sure it's all the right temperature. To get that off of the pipe, Trent has to catch it in these gloves that he has on, and then he'll walk it over there to our annealer and set it inside. So we're getting ready to remove it from the pipe right now. So Trent is going to put the gloves under the piece. Ben is putting water on that restriction line, which is cracking the glass. We'll tap on the pipe, which will break the glass where he's putting the water. And now we put it in the annealer. Let's clap for this team for a beautiful piece. Amazing. into the annealing oven. We'll see that piece again in a couple days when it cools down. Let's give the team one more big round of applause. Nice work. All right, now that we've finished that piece, we're going to recalibrate a little bit, figure out our next steps, and then we'll start the next thing after lunch. So we'll be back after lunch to make another piece. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back in here making more stuff around 2-ish. 2-ish. I'm not sure exactly what time.